30 meters beneath the surface of the Mediterranean Sea in 2027, a commercial diver adjusts the brass gas valves of his helmet, entirely unaware that under National Law 9 of 2026, he is operating as a legal outlaw. He breathes a measured mixture of compressed air, the mechanical hiss of the demand valve echoing loudly inside the heavy fiberglass shell enclosing his head. The crushing water pressure presses relentlessly against his vulcanized dry suit, a physical weight that demands absolute respect, technical precision, and unwavering competence. He moves his thick, gloved hands over a submerged steel pipeline, executing a complex flange alignment in the murky, green-tinted darkness of the coastal waters. He is highly skilled. He possesses over a decade of practical experience navigating the silent, lethal environment of the deep. But back on the surface, resting on a damp, salt-stained clipboard inside the dive control cabin, his paperwork tells a drastically different story. His official qualification is a self-certification, a fragile, typewritten piece of paper based entirely on outdated, defunct regulations. For years, that single document felt like impenetrable armor. It was accepted by site foremen, stamped by port authorities, and filed away into filing cabinets without a second thought. But the 2027 horizon has violently arrived, and the rules of engagement have fundamentally changed. That piece of paper is no longer worth the ink it is printed on. The Italian state has drawn a sharp, unyielding line in the sand, or rather, in the seabed. The diver, despite his undeniable physical capability and years of survival, is formally and legally unauthorized to be in the water. He has become a ghost in a regulatory system that no longer tolerates shadows, ambiguity, or shortcuts. The grace period is over, and the era of strict compliance has begun. For far too long, the commercial diving sector in Italy existed within a dense, treacherous legislative fog, a place where the physical dangers of the deep were dangerously compounded by the administrative failures on the surface. It was a sprawling, unregulated environment where the inherent, lethal risks of underwater construction were governed by fragmented interpretations and a collective, industry-wide willingness to look the other way. In this dark grey area, a dangerous illusion took deep root among operators. Many commercial divers and their employers began to wield one specific, misunderstood standard, UNI 11366, as a protective shield against legal liability. They treated this basic set of procedural guidelines as if it were a supreme, legally binding professional qualification. A diver would simply sign their name to a piece of paper, self-certifying that their daily operations aligned with the UNI 1136 standard, hand that document to a site manager, and plunge into the freezing water. But this entire system was a fragile facade, built on a foundation of bureaucratic sand. UNI 11136 was never designed nor authorized to be the definitive law of the land. It was merely a technical document, a loose collection of operational suggestions and best practices, completely devoid of the ironclad legal authority required to govern the lives of human beings working under crushing atmospheric pressure. The Ministry of Labour watched this practice spread like a virus along the coastlines, noting the severe compounding risks of allowing an inherently hazardous industry to police itself with non-binding paperwork. The mounting tension finally snapped with the issuance of Interpellation No. 12 of 2015. The ministry delivered a sharp, unequivocal, and devastating message to the sector. They declared in no uncertain terms that UNE 1136 is not a law. It is not mandatory. Most crucially, they stated that possessing this document does not magically exempt an employer from their fundamental moral and legal duty to ensure concrete, tangible protection measures as dictated by the Consolidated Law on Safety. The ministry struck the first massive blow against the illusion, peeling back the false sense of security that had blanketed the ports, harbours, and offshore rigs of the Italian coast for a generation. The true fatal strike against these old, dangerous habits did not happen on the slippery deck of a dive boat or the steel grate of an offshore rig, but rather inside the austere, bone-dry halls of the Court of Cassation. Criminal Sentence Section 4, number 3223. Here, the long-simmering conflict between absolute legal rigour and entrenched industry habit collided in spectacular public view. The judges sat elevated above the polished wooden floor, hundreds of miles away from the salt, the cold, and the crushing pressure of the sea. Yet their carefully chosen words carried the immense, undeniably weight of the ocean itself. They meticulously examined the industry's widespread reliance on the UNE 1136 standard, dissecting the desperate arguments of those who claimed it was a sufficient, legally binding safety protocol. The court's final ruling was decisive, surgical, and entirely unforgiving. They established a permanent, unshakable legal precedent, declaring formally that UNE 1136 is strictly a procedural standard. It is not a specialized reference standard. It holds no magical jurisdiction over the lives of commercial divers. The heavy wooden gavel came down, the sharp crack echoing through the silent chamber, as the judges clarified that this procedural standard could never, under any circumstances, replace the strict life-saving obligations laid out by Article 92 of Legislative Decree 81/2008. With that single sentence, the highest court in the Italian Republic shattered the legislative grey area into 1,000 unrecoverable pieces. They exposed the self-certifications for what they truly were, legally hollow, dangerous pieces of paper. The widespread practice of handing a busy foreman a self-signed logbook and walking confidently to the edge of the dock was now instantly classified as a direct violation of national safety law. The commercial diving industry was left reeling, utterly stripped of its favourite, most convenient loophole, and desperately in need of a true, legally sound framework to keep its operators safely in the water. Salvation for the industry did not emerge from the bureaucratic corridors of Rome, but from the extreme southern tip of the peninsula. The desperate gaze of the commercial diving sector turned toward the sun-baked island of Sicily, where a radically different, far more demanding philosophy had already taken root. This was the Sicily model. Long before the national government found the political will to act, the Sicilian region had boldly charted a solitary, fiercely rigorous course through the nationwide legislative fog. Regional Law 07 of 2016 became the brilliant, undeniable beacon of progress. On the busy, salt-washed docks of Palermo, the rules of engagement were entirely different from the mainland. There were absolutely no self-certifications permitted here. Sicily demanded, by law, that all commercial diver training paths align strictly and without deviation with the international standards of the IDSA, the International Diving Schools Association. They built a robust, unforgiving system based entirely on verifiable, tangible metrics rather than empty promises. For years, this localized Sicilian law was the only true, legally sound lifeline for divers in Italy, a small, highly disciplined pocket of clarity in a vast, nationwide sea of deadly confusion. Then came the monumental, landscape-altering shift. The passage of Law No. 9 on January 26, 2026. The Italian state finally looked directly at the Sicily model and recognized its undeniable life-saving strength. With the decisive stroke of a pen, the state fully incorporated the rigid Sicilian framework, instantly elevating it from a regional safeguard to an absolute national mandate. The uncompromising rigor originally forged in the ports of Palermo suddenly stretched its protective reach across the entire country. The new national law firmly aligned Italy with the highest global standards, ensuring that a commercial diver working in the freezing northern alpine lakes was held to the exact same rigorous, internationally recognized requirements as a diver working in the warm, turbulent waters of the southern Mediterranean. The fragmented, dangerous interpretations of the past were violently swept away, replaced by a single, unified, and uncompromising law. This revolutionary new national law fundamentally changed the very definition of professional competence. Competence is no longer represented by a forged signature on a flimsy page. It is a physical, undeniable, and exhaustively measurable reality. It is now measured exclusively in bottom minutes and depths reached, logged meticulously, and verified by external authorities without a single exception. The demanding IDSA parameters are no longer open to casual debate, negotiation, or creative interpretation by site managers. Consider the brutal physical mechanics of achieving Level 3, the coveted inshore or offshore qualification. A diver seeking this advanced level must physically prove their ability to manage complex, dangerous work in real, critical, and often terrifying conditions. They descend into the dark water, heavily burdened by thick umbilical cords, emergency bailout bottles, and specialized hydraulic tools, entering an environment that is actively hostile to human life. To earn the IDSA Level 3 certification, the new national law dictates that a diver must accumulate a strict minimum of 310 bottom minutes. 310 minutes spent breathing cold, compressed gas, managing delicate buoyancy, and executing complex, heavy-duty tasks like underwater welding or structural inspection. They must do all of this while the biting cold seeps into their bones and the immense atmospheric pressure tests the absolute limits of their life support equipment. Every single one of those 310 minutes must be officially documented, stamped, and verified. The slow, relentless ticking of the diver's depth watch is now the only metric that truly matters. These minutes are no longer a simple suggestion, a rough estimate, or a best practice guideline to be aimed for. They are an absolute, unyielding state requirement. If a diver is short of this metric by even a fraction of a minute, they simply do not qualify. The state now demands absolute proof of survival, endurance, and skill under pressure, ensuring that only those who have truly mastered the unforgiving environment are legally permitted to earn a living within it. The sweeping implications of this legislative shift are profound, setting a hard, uncompromising deadline for the entire commercial diving industry. The 2027 horizon is closing in rapidly, looming like a massive storm front over the coastal ports. The dark era of improvisation, of relying on outdated, meaningless papers, and a friendly, knowing nod from a site manager, is entirely and permanently over. Decree 3173 of the Sicilian region now stands firm as the absolute technical and methodological point of reference for this new, highly regulated era. For any commercial diver looking to secure their livelihood and avoid catastrophic legal consequences, the path forward requires an immediate strategic choice. Choosing to train at a recognized center of excellence, such as CEDIFOP in Palermo, is no longer just an educational preference or a line item on a resume. It is a vital, non-negotiable necessity for survival in the trade. By choosing to train at an institution that strictly adheres to the new national laws and the uncompromising IDSA standards, a diver actively anticipates the heavy, career-ending sanctions that will soon blanket the national territory. They align themselves not only with the strict letter of Italian law, but also with the highly demanding circulars of IMCA, the International Marine Contractors Association. This critical alignment guarantees their legal and operational access to the most prestigious, high-stakes, and lucrative underwater construction sites across the globe. The young and veteran divers alike who are walking through the metal gates of CEDIFOP today are not just learning how to strike a welding arc underwater. They are actively securing their fundamental legal right to exist and operate in the industry tomorrow. The final undeniable seal of transparency on this arduous, decades-long journey was struck in May 2026. Two highly respected international auditors, Leo Lagarde and Wim Gerrits, arrived in Italy to meticulously examine the newly established regulatory framework. They sat in quiet rooms, systematically sifting through mountains of new legislation, strict training protocols, verified dive logs, and operational safety standards. Their expert scrutiny was absolute, leaving no procedural stone unturned. When they finally laid down their pens and signed their official report, their audit served as the ultimate validation. It officially confirmed the absolute legitimacy and effectiveness of the regulatory and training path that Italy had so painstakingly adopted. Their signatures permanently closed the book on the lethal legislative grey area once and for all. Diving safety in Italy is no longer a matter of loose interpretation, local custom, or fatal corner cutting. From the dawn of 2027 onward, the stark, unforgiving difference between a highly trained, fully compliant professional and an unauthorized, legally outlawed operator will be written in permanent, unalterable ink within the official state registers. The long, difficult transition is finally complete. The future of commercial diving has arrived on Italian shores, and it is a future that is finally safe, strictly regulated, and globally recognized by the highest authorities in the field. The national law has spoken with absolute, terrifying clarity, drawing a line that cannot be crossed. The choice to step forward into the bright light of compliance or remain behind in the outlawed, dangerous shadows rests entirely with the individual diver. Share this episode with anyone interested in the future of commercial diving.